Welcome to the Illuminated Path podcast. I'm your host, Liv, founder of Eno Wellness Collective. My wellness journey started with yoga, which led me down the path of exploring healing modalities like meditation, breath work, sound healing, mindset work, and so much more. This exploration inspired my mission to help others find what lights them up. Get comfortable and curious as we learn from experts, teachers, and creators who are lighting up their communities and living an inspired, expansive life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path podcast. Today's guest is Leah McCloud, and we are going to dive into all things human design. If you've heard of human design before and you were interested in diving a little bit deeper, or if you've never heard of it, have no clue where to start, this is the perfect episode for that. So I connected with Leah a couple of years ago related to getting a human design reading, and I wanted to learn more about my energy type. And so we connected that way. And since then, she's become a community partner. So our ENA membership has access to a special perk from her. And we've just stayed connected and been able to witness each other's growth in this wellness world. So Leah McCloud is a human design expert and a spiritual coach. And what I love about her work is it's really dedicated to demystifying spirituality and bringing people closer to their most authentic self through human design. She has led retreats. She works one-on-one with clients. She has assisted wellness leaders all over the world. And her philosophy, which I think many of you will appreciate and resonate with, is really around bridging the gap between the woo and the science and really making spirituality digestible, practical, and fun. So she'll share a lot about how you can connect and work with her in this episode. But what I love about our conversation is we were able to really dive into her journey, hear about how she even found human design, and then really diving into the types. You'll want to pull up your chart for this episode. You'll want to take some notes. So we'll link everything that you need in the show notes to get started. But this is definitely one of those episodes you're going to want to take some notes on. I'm super excited to share more about human design. I would love to hear how you resonate with this episode as well as your energy type. So let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, Leah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and share human design with all of your listeners. And congratulations on the new podcast. It's so exciting. I have a podcast as well, and it hasn't been too long since it's been out there. So actually, Livia and I were just talking for the past couple months about podcasting and things. So I'm excited to finally be here and it be out into the world. So congratulations. I know it's not simple. It looks a lot easier than it is. So
Yeah, I so appreciate you sharing all of your podcast tips pre-launch with me because, you're kind of putting everything together and wondering if you're doing it the right way. And I think your insight into your process was so helpful. So I'm so glad we get to reconnect in this way and get to share human design with people. So for those of you who are listening that are like, what are they talking about? What is human design? Let's go ahead and just start there, and then we'll dive into your background.
Yeah. So human design is a self-awareness system. So oftentimes, like we'll kind of say it's like, astrology and Enneagram had a baby, but it's very much this tool that helps us to understand how our energy works and how we can get into alignment to work with our energy. So it's not exactly a personality test, but it really is this beautiful tool that we can use to understand, really just the energy that we have. And so it's based on your birth information. So it's not some quiz that you take or something that's subjective to where your mind is or what you're situationally going through. It's based on your birth information. And so therefore your charts, it's a fixed thing. So essentially everyone has this chart. It's a body graph similar to a natal chart where if like you put your info into an astrology calculator, you'll see, where all the planets were at the time that you were born. Human design shows you the energy that you have from the moment that you were born. And so everyone has this blueprint. And so if we were to like look at your vessel as a human body, it's like this is the energy that's inside of that vessel. And it helps us to understand, again, how our energy works, how we can make decisions in alignment with our energy, how we can reduce friction in our lives, how we can make decisions, following our intuition, what gifts we have, what our life theme is, and so much more. It goes even as deep into like how you digest food and information, and so much more. So it's this really deep tool that allows us to really just tap into our gifts and our and how our energy is optimized in this life.
Yeah, when I remember seeing human design and getting my chart, I remember being like, "Whoa, I need to dive deeper into this." That's why I had reached out to do a reading with you before. But I'm guessing you haven't always been into human design. So tell us a little bit about what was that path to finding it, and how did it even make its way into your life?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it's such a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. If anyone wants to hear like the deepest details of it, I do have an episode on my podcast. It's the first episode, but really, it's a long story because it didn't just happen overnight. For me, like when I found human design, I felt super confronted by the system, and so I find that when people get into human design, there's two things that happen. It's either they feel like, wow, I feel so seen, and this is exactly who I am. I've been searching for this language. Or you have an experience where you're like, wow, this is exactly who I am, but I'm really not living a life aligned to this, what this says. And I know what this means. And I know exactly that this is the person deep inside of me, but I am not living a life that is in accordance to this. And so that was my experience. I was like incredibly confronted by human design. And so my story actually begins back in 2017 or 2018. I was listening to a podcast and yeah, someone was on there talking about human design. And so I'm a big self-help junkie, which I know a lot of your listeners probably are as well. And I know you are too, Livia. And I looked at my chart and I was like, what is this? What's this personality test or this quiz that I haven't taken yet? Because I feel as if I've done, the Enneagrams and the astrology and the, strengths finder, all the things. And so I remember at the time I looked at my chart and it just told me, you're a generator, and it just kind of listed out these aspects of my chart, and it was super technical and complicated. And the system that I used to look up my chart was very much like it was like gray and black and white, and just like wasn't pretty, and it really just felt like this technical thing that wasn't something that would be applicable to my life. And so honestly, I kind of put it away and never really thought about it until in 2020. We all know what happened that year, the pandemic. And I was on Instagram, and an influencer I follow shared about a human design reading that she had had. And she was, she tagged this girl and said, "Oh my gosh, I had the most incredible reading," and blah, blah, blah. And I was at the time very, I was by myself. I didn't really have much going on. My boyfriend, he's a nurse, so he was in the hospital. And that was when it was like, we don't know what this is. You really weren't seeing people. And so I had a lot of free time, and I also should say that I was working a corporate job. Like I worked in the Fortune 500. I manage a development team. So I was definitely doing that sort of thing. And I was working remote, of course. And so I had this beautiful corporate career laid out for me. But then I was really interested in self help and spirituality. And so, yeah, so I ended up kind of clicking that girl's name, scheduling a reading. And I had maybe like a week between the time that I scheduled the reading and then actually had the reading. And so I just kind of had this intuitive hit, like this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like I just knew it. And so I ended up ordering, all the human design books that I could, and really just spending a week kind of like diving into these books. And so then when I had my session, I told the girl that I was like, I think I want to do this. And so she educated me along the way and told me a lot about human design. And again, like that's when I felt super confronted, but also just fascinated by this entire thing. And so that was in April of 2020, I believe. And then, I spent that entire summer trying to teach myself, and then realized it's so complicated getting into human design. Anyone listening that knows human design, they're probably like, yeah, it's so confusing. And so that's really where I was trying to teach myself. And I just realized this is something that you can't just teach yourself. You really need a training. So I enrolled in a training, and then honestly, after doing the training for a few months, I thought that human design would just be something that I did on the side. I kind of felt like, okay, I have my corporate career that's kind of laid out for me. I know exactly like where I'm going, what are the steps in the ladder that I'm going to be taking in this big Fortune 500 company. I'm making good money for my age. And so I just was like, maybe this is a way for me to tap into my interests and my hobbies and my spiritual side, and I can help people because I've always been the friend that people come to for advice. But I slowly realized that I shouldn't say I slowly realized. I slowly but surely turned into a business on its own. It was like, after one reading after another, someone would be asking me, you know, read my boyfriend and then their boyfriend's mom and then their boyfriend's mom's coworker and then their friend and then their grandma. And so it just kind of like trickled into all these different people wanting to know about human design. And so I think at some point in the States, if you make so much money doing something, you have to register yourself as an LLC. And so I thought, well, I'll do the proper things and kind of get that all set in stone. But I honestly just got to a point where I was doing so much where I had this really high demanding job. And then I also was doing human design and I wanted nothing to do with my high demand job. And I wanted everything to do with human design. And so then there's, this whole point of my story where it was really hard. I realized I wasn't practicing what I was preaching in human design because, one of the parts of human design is, again, working with your energy and listening to your intuition. And so clearly my intuition was telling me that, you need to leave your corporate job. And, I talk a lot about manifestation in the work that I do. It's definitely not, manifestation isn't a huge part of human design, but I definitely believe that it's one of the best manifestation tools that exists because when you're in alignment with your energy, things really start to happen for you. And so there was a point in this where I ended up getting a promotion. So the universe really tested me. And I say that there's always a test when you're about to get to where you want. The universe kind of is like, do you really want this thing? Or are you going to stay where you're at? And I kept talking about how I wanted to do human design and I kept journaling and, spending a lot of time manifesting that. But I got a promotion. So I got like a 20 grand promotion in the middle of this. And I failed my test. I ended up staying at my corporate job for a little bit longer. And then a whole mental health journey kind of came in here where I fell into, honestly, just like a deep depression of just like, I don't like where my life is. And I couldn't see the path forward of doing this forever. And so again, I was confronted with like, okay, I'm not really practicing what I'm preaching. Every day I'm meeting with people and giving them these life-changing readings, telling them how to get into alignment, how to listen to their intuition while I'm sitting here ignoring mine completely. Um, and actually, I was in a session with a girl and she said to me, how she was the same energy type and profile as me. I'm a 5-1 sacral generator for anyone who knows human design, which we'll dive into all of that here soon too. But she was like, how do you, honor your energy? She was the exact same as me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't. And literally it was that call that I got off and scheduled a meeting with my boss. So I ended up leaving my corporate job. But I went part-time for a little bit. It was like a whole thing. And so I've really been doing this I've been doing it since 2020, but I didn't fully step into doing this until 2022. And now it's been this journey and it's been really great. I'm building a human design app. I'm writing a book. I've got a really nice following and community online that I love talking to. I have a big podcast in the spirituality space. And so it's just really been incredible.
It's so many things in alignment from that decision. And I think so many people can relate to kind of the practical corporate job side, but then having like that
Totally.
interest and passion and spiritualities, magical side as well, and finding a balance between both. And also, I've been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs who now have their own, thing. And it isn't always just, I'm going to quit my job and then go full force. And it's like, okay, I need it part time, or then I need, figuring out what works for you in order to really like land into this new, space. And I have, witnessed your community grow and expand, and you're doing all the things. You have a Costa Rica retreat, you have your podcast.
Yeah.
Like, it's so beautiful to see human design like take so many different shapes and like the different offers that you have too. So let's get into human design because I'm excited to share,
Yeah.
about it. You shared a little bit about it, but wanted to start off with, I know my type, I'm a manifestor. You mentioned you're a generator. Can you tell us a little bit about the types and just generally, yeah, if someone takes that, puts in their birth information, what kind of information will they see?
Yeah. So, okay, if you're listening, I definitely recommend pulling up your chart because you're going to want to have that because listening and then going back is going to be more hard than just having it right up on your phone or on your computer. So go to thedesignofyou.com and I'll send you my link, Livia, so you can put this in your show notes. But thedesignofyou.com, there will be a button to get your chart. So I recommend going in there, inputting your birth information. You do need your exact time down to the minute. Most things don't change by the minute, but there is a whole part of your chart that changes minute to minute. So it is important to have that. And yeah, so just input that. And then what you'll see is your body graph, your human design chart, which is like this like little artistic graph over what looks like the body. And it's kind of like your blueprint, your soul print, your energetic blueprint. And so then you'll see a list on the side that says, what your energy type is, what your strategy is, what your authority is, and so on and so forth. And you'll just want to have that information as we move through. But so really the first piece is energy type, which is the kind of biggest thing that people are aware of. So if we think of astrology, a lot of people know their zodiac sign. If you're a Scorpio or a Capricorn or Aquarius, with your energy type, there's only 5. So you can either be a manifester, a manifesting generator, a generator, a projector, or a reflector. And so I'll kind of go through each of the types and then explain a little bit about which each one means. And so we'll start with manifestors, which make up around 9% of the population. Manifestors are go-getters. They're people who they're really here to create movements and create momentum and start big projects. And they're people who get these creative bursts of ideas and they just kind of want to get to where they want to go quickly. And their biggest lesson is to really allow themselves to be big and bold and unapologetic, because manifestors are people who like to get to where they want to go really quickly, but they don't like people to get in their way, and they don't like to tell people what their plans are or where they're going, and that creates a lot of friction in their lives. So their lesson is to be bold, be unapologetic, do what you want, go to where you want to go, and tell people along the way, inform people of what you're doing. Because where manifestors get tripped up is when they try to go fast and they don't explain where they're going. And then people are like, wait, what's happening? And then, the thing about manifestors as well is they're people who they do require rest more than some of the other types, because between big movements and big momentum and ideas, they need to have an adequate amount of rest to be able to even get new creative ideas. And so that's a little bit about the manifestor. And I want to also speak about something called strategy. So when you looked up your chart, you'll also see a strategy piece. And I'll kind of weave this into each of them. But if you know your energy type, you'll know your strategy. And strategy basically means, how can I strategically work with my energy to bring myself aligned opportunities? And for manifestors, it's to inform and initiate. So when they get, these creative ideas, it's important for them to tune into their intuition, which is this authority piece that we'll get into later, decide if it's right for them, and then inform people who are impacted by the decision, and then initiate and move forward and move into action. So those are manifestors, which, by the way, Livia is a manifester. So anyone who knows her may be like, totally, that is exactly how she operates. How does that feel for you, Livia?
Yeah, that I remember reading about manifestors and, when we did our reading, and I remember thinking, wow, that is spot on. But I really only could say that it's spot on since I've made this move into being an entrepreneur, wellness, like everything feels so much more in alignment. I think I was living maybe a different type before that. And so it makes
Yeah.
so much sense. And it's a good reminder to inform, because a lot of times I like to create in my own kind of, behind the scenes and then announce something versus yeah, bring people along on like kind of the journey and share along the way. So that's a good reminder for me as well.
Yeah. Do you ever have moments where you don't explain, or you don't kind of tell people where you're going or what your plans are? And then all of a sudden there's like just so much more friction in getting to that place, rather than if you just kind of let them know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say a big like experience of that happening was like it was years ago, like I was in a long-term relationship, like 6 years, and we broke up, but I had never told anyone before that there were ever any, challenges or issues. It came as like this big surprise versus people being like, "Whoa, what was going on?" So I always think of that
Yeah.
of like inform people, bring people along on the journey, even if it's challenging to talk about.
Yeah. The way that I like to describe manifestors oftentimes is you guys are like the bus drivers. And so how I think of this, and this will make a lot more sense once I dive into the other types. So manifestors are really people who, since you create momentum and movements, you're kind of like someone driving the bus. Like all of the other types, when we dive into them, their strategies, they have to wait for something, versus manifestors can really just go. Like that's why they're called manifestors. Like they can manifest things very quickly. And so you think of it like a bus driver, where it's like you're on your path of alignment, like your road that you're driving on, like that is your life, right? And so what happens is like you kind of stop and you go, You open the door and you're like, "Hey, like, are you this is where we're going. Like, are you coming along?" And that's to the generators and the manifesting generators and the reflectors and projectors and maybe other manifestors too. And it's either like if they're like, "Oh my gosh, no, why would you go there? I want to go here. Like this is what I want to do." Like your job is to go, "I don't care what they say. Like I'm going to still go where I want to go. I told them." And so they can either get on my bus and they can, help me get there quicker. They can maybe read the map. They can, help me with directions or so on and so forth. But if not, like I'm gonna keep going and you're not gonna get on. So that's kind of how I think of manifestors as like you're the one creating the movements and people are either gonna get involved and help you and bring energy to bring this vision to life, or they're gonna get out of your way. And so
Mm,
it's your job
that
to say
resonates
like,
so
okay,
much.
yeah, I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna let them, tell me to go the wrong direction or tell me to turn around. So that's a little bit about the manifestors. So did you have any questions on that since that's what you are before we move to the other types?
No, I think I'm good on that. I'm interested to because I know other people who are different types, and they've told me their types, but I don't know that much about the other types, so I'm interested in learning about those.
Okay, so fun. So again, manifestors 9%. So now let's move into generators. Generators make up majority of the population, about 38% of the population. I'm a generator myself, and generators are people who are incredibly magnetic, and they are people who uplift the energy of the world when they do things that they love. So their gift is really bringing this energy and fuel to sustain and build and work. And generators, their biggest lesson is to do what lights them up and to do things that they love to do because oftentimes generators they get caught up in also people pleasing. We all kind of do in different ways, but theirs is like prioritizing other people's satisfaction above their own or committing their life force energy on projects that they actually aren't excited about that drain them. And so since they impact and infect most of the world, they actually can bring down energy or lift up energy. Why this is because generators, they've got this part in their body. It's called the sacral life force, and everyone has a sacral. It just is like if yours is activated or not. And majority of the population it is activated. So that's generators. They have an activated sacral life force, whereas like manifestors, projectors, and reflectors don't have that activation. And so for them, because they impact people, they have to use this fuel and energy to doing things that they enjoy doing so that they can kind of raise the vibration of everything and everyone around them. So their greatest lesson is to say no to what doesn't light them up, even if there's no logic surrounding it. Generators also have incredibly strong gut feelings. So they're also designed to really listen to those gut feelings and, kind of get excited about the things that they love. There's a quote that I saw recently. Actually, this wasn't recently. This is something that I've seen a lot in my life that's like do the hardest thing first. For generators, it's like do the most satisfying thing first because their energy, if it's in this satisfying place, they then can allow their day to really be magnetic and full of radiance and energy. And so when you see a generator doing something that they love, they're quite literally sparkling and they get so lit up and excited about it. So that's generators. Their strategy now they are designed to wait to respond. So rather than like forcing things or chasing things to happen in their life, they're really designed to just like live life and whatever their body is excited and that lit up about to just go and do that thing. So instead of again trying to force things to happen or make things happen like a manifestor can do, they just have to go, okay, what's in front of me right now? And what does my body feel the most lit up about? And so that is kind of how they work with their mechanics. Then we have manifesting generators. Manifesting generators are relatively similar to the generators, but they're a little bit of a hybrid of the manifester and the generator. So like manifestors who get these creative bursts of ideas, manifesting generators also get that. But unlike the manifester who doesn't fully have this like fuel or sacral energy to sustain work for a while, like Livia, you're someone as a manifester who just creates the movements and, tells people what's going on. You kind of have this vision and this idea. But you need that, like, why it's so important for you to inform people is because then people can really get on board to help you get there. And so for a manifesting generator, they get those ideas, but they also have the sacral, juicy fuel, life force energy to sustain kind of where they want to go. But manifesting generators, they are people who move really quickly. They want to go really fast. So we call them kind of like our multi-hyphenate passionate beings because oftentimes they'll be interested in a multitude of things, and their biggest lesson is to allow themselves to be interested in everything. So generators by themselves they have this sort of committed energy to something that they're interested in. So if they are like, okay, I'm going to do human design, they can kind of commit to that. Whereas like a manifesting generator is going to be like, okay, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And so instead of feeling like they have to niche down or find their one thing, their biggest lesson is to really allow themselves to do all the things and go really quickly, and then, have all these passions and to not fit themselves into a box. So it's kind of like bridging the gap between the manifestor and the generator and combining it into one. And they make up 35% of the population. So when we look at that sort of like sacral stuff that I talked about, having a defined sacral, generators and manifesting generators make up around 70% of the population. And they both have that like life force energy. Whereas then the manifestor projectors and reflectors, which we'll talk about in a moment, they don't necessarily have that energy consistently within them. Does that make sense? Do you
I
have any
have
questions on any of that?
Yeah, my team member who works with me, she's been with me about almost 2 years. She's a manifesting generator, and I always love to know people's human design type, especially, people I work with, clients, people I've, hired on. And I feel like we're such a good match because I'm in my manifestor energy, she's in her manifesting generator energy. She's like we're on the same like wavelength. I feel like as a team, like it's a really good match.
Oh my gosh, it's perfect, and I'm sure she's someone who you could give her, and you've got all the different areas of your business, like, you've got your membership, you've got your events that you do, you've got large scale events, smaller events, I think you do yoga as well, and then you've got the podcast, and I know I'm missing things because I don't know all the ins and outs, but you coaching, I know you have all sorts of stuff, so that's probably perfect for you because that allows you to have support from someone who can kind of dive into all these different areas, and I'm sure she's like a unicorn in all the things that she can help with, so definitely like a really great team member. And honestly, there's no type better than the other. Like, I definitely can look at a team dynamic and say, like, you should get a projector, you should get a reflector, you should get a, generator. I can definitely see that in different dynamics, but also like each type kind of brings this level of, their own energy and gifts that can really be powerful in a team setting. So I love that. And so let's move into the other types. So now we have projectors. So projectors make up 22% of the population, and projectors are our guides and our leaders, and we oftentimes call them the seers. And they're people who they have this way of kind of absorbing energy all around them, and then they have this ability to penetrate awareness and really see things that other people can't see. They can devise systems really well, master different processes, and they're people who need a lot of rest. So they require more rest than the average. And, and when you get into human design, you'll see lots of memes and things on like projectors needing naps. But really, what this is that they need to be really careful with their energy output. And because they're super efficient, so they can get more done in 4 hours than the average person can get done in one day. And so it's important for them to use those spurts that they get of like that kind of efficiency and then allow themselves to really just chill and rest. And their biggest lesson is to lean into that, to lean into rest. And their other biggest lesson is to allow themselves to wait to be invited. So, their strategy, the way that they can work with their energy best is by allowing themselves to wait for an invitation or recognition before moving into action. And what I mean by this is like, it's different from the generator where generators have to wait to respond. And I don't think I actually mentioned it with the manifesting generators. Theirs is also to wait to respond. It's the same as the generators, but then it can be helpful for them to inform. But going back to projectors, so projectors is to wait for the invitation and recognition. And it's different from the wait to respond because it's not about like them tuning into their body moment to moment and getting lit up by something. It's more like before I give this advice, because they absorb information and they have this ability to like see, before they tell people what they see and what they've absorbed, they need to make sure that they're invited to do so or recognize first in their kind of like brilliance and what they see, because otherwise they can project onto people. So that's why they're called projectors. And so their greatest lesson is to, when they're working with others, if they are doing something on their own or if they want to like make something happen in their own world, they can do that. But when it involves other people, it's just to make sure that that person really sees them and really understands them and is willing to hear their, brilliant advice. And so that's their greatest lesson, is to give themselves rest, and then also make sure that people are ready and open to hearing, so that their brilliant advice can actually land and make a difference in the world, because that's ultimately what they're most excited about. And then we have reflectors, which make up 1% of the population, less than 1%. So if you're a reflector listening, you're so rare, which is so funny to say, because some people either love that or they hate that. And I think it's hilarious, because when I found out that I was a generator, I was like, seriously, I'm like the most common type. Like, I thought I was rare and special, you know? And that's how oftentimes generators or manifesting generators feel. And but then it's so funny, because reflectors, they don't like hearing that they're rare, because their whole lives have felt so different. So they feel seen, but then they're also like, of course I'm like the one that's totally different from everyone. And I'm like, well, most of the people wish that they were different. So it's funny, but reflectors are people who quite literally feel the energy of everything around them. So if you look at their chart, so in your body graph, you'll see there's these different shapes, and some of them are colored in, and some of them aren't colored in. With reflectors, it's completely wide open, so everything's white. And so that means that when they're out and about, they kind of pick up energy, they absorb it, and they mirror it back to other people. So if you want to know how you're doing, go spend some time with a reflector. They're going to literally like reflect the energy that you have right back to you. So if you have a reflector in your life and there's something you don't like about them, that might be something that you don't like in yourself. But their greatest lesson is to really get in touch with nature and the cycles of, our seasons and the cosmos. So they're really affected by moon cycles, what's kind of happening at a cosmic level. So their greatest lesson is to just tune into that, and then also give themselves patience. So their strategy is to wait to be included, and to wait in lunar cycles. So it's important for them to wait for someone to kind of include them in energetically, and then for them to give themselves potentially 28 days to 30 days, a full lunar cycle, to really feel into if something's right for them or not. And so uh yeah, so that's a little bit how reflectors work. And so those are all of the five types. I don't know if I missed anything, but Livia, if you have any questions on that, we can dive a little bit further.
Yeah, it's interesting as you explain each of them because, obviously I definitely resonate with my type the most, but I resonate with a little piece of all the other ones as well, right? Like a little bits that I can be like, oh yeah, I'm like that. And so it's interesting
Yeah.
to look at that. I also know a few reflectors and I'm interested. Would you say that reflectors, because you mentioned kind of their energy, I guess, is open. Would you consider those people like oftentimes people who say they're kind of highly sensitive? Are they typically, would you say, reflectors, or they lean towards, I guess, um, yeah, feeling that way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're all highly, sensitive in a lot of different ways. Every person's chart is conditioned in some way. So a big theme in human design is talking about conditioning and where you're conditioned, in your body. So specifically, like in these energy centers, we can see like some people are really conditioned through their voice. Some people are really conditioned through their emotions. Some people, are conditioned through their ego, and so on and so forth. And so when we look at a reflector's chart, like, yeah, they can be highly conditioned, but I also find that reflectors are some of the most wise people that exist, because they are so open, and so they have to feel this energy, and so they naturally learn to just sample energy rather than taking it in and making it, their own and becoming that. When they can just sample it and then reflect it back and then move on and take care of themselves, they also require quite a bit of rest, just like the projectors, probably just as much as the projectors. But they also, self-care and their environments are so important. So when they take care of those two things, then they aren't as like affected by other people as, they potentially could be. So human design is always a really great tool for them to get into because of that.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about environments? I find that super interesting. My environment in my chart is markets, but I know there's like a number of different environments. Like, what does that mean in human design
Yeah.
terms?
Yeah. Okay. So, really, like human design is very layered. And when I say it's layered, it's like there's one piece that you have to kind of understand before you move to the next. And then it's like once you get that piece, then you move to the next piece. And so it's almost like a game or like a domino effect. It's like once you've got this part down, you kind of hit the domino, and then the next piece happens. And then all of a sudden you get to these deeper layers. And so there's this whole section in human design called variable, and it really speaks to what we call the primary health system, and then also something called rave cosmology. or rave psychology that is like really kind of looking into how your mind operates and then how your body optimally functions at a cellular level. So human design, what I didn't mention in the beginning is that it's part science and part self-awareness. So there are quite a lot of scientific systems intertwined into the human design system. And so this is where it gets really technical. And so before I dive into this, I just want to say that you do need that exact time for this. So if anyone looked up their chart and they're like, okay, I think I'm like, midnight, make sure you know the minute because this can change really fast. But environment is this piece that speaks to the environment that you thrive in. And before we really kind of understand our environment, we have to be kind of in alignment with our energy. So I mentioned our energy type and I mentioned strategy. And then there is the authority piece that comes in next. And authority is just a fancy word for your intuition. And there's 7 different types of intuition in human design. So some people are driven by their emotions, some people are driven by their gut feelings, some people it's willpower, some people it's instincts, and so on and so forth. And so once you're working with that, with your energy, you really fall into what we call your signature theme. So that can be satisfaction for generators and manifesting generators. It can be it's success for projectors, it's surprise for reflectors, and for for you as a manifester, you're someone who really is all about like peace and feeling calm. And so once you're kind of working with that, you start to feel that way. And so once that's happening, then these parts sort of unlock this cellular level of like, okay, now these are ways that you can get into alignment. And the first piece is actually digestion. So when you once you're kind of working with that, you may start to notice that your body craves specific types of scenarios with your food. So some people it's about, the environments you're in, some people it's about the sound that's happening near you when you're eating. Some it's about the type of food in terms of like seasonality. And so once that's happening and you really start to kind of work with that, it usually happens on a subconscious level. Then your environment start to really matter. And the environment piece actually doesn't take place until after the age of 30. So if you're under the age of 30, your environment might not fully make sense right now, but it will with time, specifically if you're in alignment, aka working with your energy, strategy, intuition, authority. And then, you have this digestion piece kind of already happening. And then your environment takes place. And so with markets, like you are, Livia, markets is all about being really thriving in places where it's kind of resembling a market. So it may be where there's lots of different options. So we think of what happens in a market, like you're somewhere and there's choices that you can make. There's a cash register, so there's an exchange happening typically. And so you may do really well in environments where people are coming together for a common cause and there's lots of exchanges taking place. So that could be quite literally a farmer's market. It might be a wellness event where you've got different vendors. You may really enjoy like online marketplaces or online communities. Like those are places that you thrive. And in your home, what this looks like is I really love the home edit on Netflix. If any of you guys have
Me
watched that,
too.
and they talk about,
Yeah.
do you? Okay, it's so fun, and they talk about zones, like where you like specifically like one of the examples that I recently watched was like in your closet. They were organizing someone's closet, and they were putting these zones together. And the girl wanted a place where she has different purses. She comes in and she can empty her purse, and there's a little place for all the things that go in her purse could fall, and then she could grab a different one and based on the day, and then could put those in there. And so they were like, "This is your like unloading zone." And so for people who have markets environment, you may find that you love like little zones and like little places for things. So in your home, you may like have a spot for your keys or a little spot where like you like exchange things, or maybe you've got like a little meditation altar, or just like having these like little areas where everything has a place is really important for someone with like a markets environment. So but there's 12 different environments. So some people are caves and some people are mountains. They're symbolic to like a actual like environment more so than literally that. Like you don't need to go like sit in a market every day, Livia, but it's just symbolic to what kind of happens in these places. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. When you were talking about like it doesn't actually have to be a market, but something that like has that same kind of energy. The first thing that came
Mhm.
to mind was one the big my signature event that I have here, Wellfest, which is literally like a mix of a conference and a festival, but there's vendors, there's activations, there's things, there's food vendors, there's options. It feels I was literally imagining, I was like, that is basically kind of that market feel
Yeah.
that you would get. I also love a good farmer's market. So that's like kind of a happy place for me. So that makes a lot of sense as well.
Totally, totally, and I'm sure you just thrive in those environments, like, every day it's so important for you to just like find places that resemble those and then also like create a home that kind of resembles that as well as like having a place where people can come together or a space that people can come together and then also just like exchanging. It's just really
Yeah.
important and really good for your energy. And so what we find with these deeper layers and variable is like this is your body getting into alignment. And so we've already worked with like your energy and now this is like how do you like really get your body optimally digesting food? How are you working with your senses and how are you like optimizing your environment so that it's thriving? So yeah, that's the next piece, and then it goes a little bit deeper into your mind, but that's a whole other layer.
Yeah, I'm sure it was so interesting to learn all about this. You mentioned like you're part self-taught and then also going into training. I'm sure there's also lots of books and things that you can explore. But for you personally, like when you started to really peel the layers, unlock things, like what were some of the biggest changes that you've made that you see now, like in your life, in your business, that are starting to unlock like those manifestations?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just remembering that, like, the beautiful thing about human design is like knowing that there's no one size fits all approach to things. And I think that that can be really hard, especially in the day and age that we live in where we have social media. I mean, we have access to people's personal lives, we can see them on our screens every single day. And so it's really easy to get caught up in like someone living a better life than you or doing things better than you. And I still get caught up in this. In fact, I'm doing 75 hard right now, which has been the hardest thing for me and is going against like everything that I teach, but I wanted it because I wanted to like have this mental sort of challenge right now to kind of just to really learn a little bit more about myself and honestly it's teaching me so much about my work because so we're all designed differently. Like I can see in someone's chart whether they're built for a routine or not or whether they are built for being a leader or not. And so there's so many like pieces and parts that in my own journey that once I allowed myself to understand how I operate, how I'm wired, what my gifts are, I can actually just allow myself to lean fully into those gifts and not just think like, oh yeah, like sometimes I'm really good at leadership and sometimes I have had moments where I'm really great at this thing. It's like, no, that's like literally how I'm designed. And then the things that I wanted to be really good at that I was spending all this energy trying to be the best at, aka like being super consistent. I'm not wired for that. And so allowing myself to go, yeah, like sometimes I wake up at 5 a.m. and sometimes I wake up at 8 a.m. And sometimes I'm working and I get ready and I go out and do a coffee shop. And some days I don't. Like, I'm honestly like, it's allowed myself to work with my energy and to optimize that in the best way possible. And so that's been my biggest thing. And what I'm really passionate about teaching people.
Yeah, that's big, and I think for me, I love all the different, ways to learn about yourself, whether it's through astrology or the Enneagram or all these different things, but for human design in particular, I remember it was the first thing that I learned about that I had sort of a aha, like, "Oh, that makes sense," right? I need to that pull that I'm feeling to focus on the vision, be kind of in that, like, visionary manifestor energy. I was kind of living in the I have to do it all, kind of in the manifesting generator energy too. So I felt like I had
Mhm.
to have the vision and do it all. And that was not honoring like the rest piece, which is a big piece for the
Yeah.
manifestor. So I think when I found like learned more about the manifestor energy and how to kind of optimize it, I was able to really take a deep breath of like, oh, that makes sense. And I can lean into being in that energy and call in the support, right? There's manifesting generators that are going to make or generators or anybody really that could support and fill the pieces that I don't need to be in day to day. So as a business owner, that was really an eye-opening thing.
Yeah, 100%. And it really just allows you to go, okay, like, yeah, I don't have to do this. And for me, as a generator, it was like, okay, what do I really like? What am I lit up about in my day to day and what am I not? And how can I either make the thing that I don't like to do fun for me and make it light me up, or how can I just delegate that or just not do it? Like, I don't have to do this in my business to find success or in my daily life. And so I think that's been a big thing. And so for you too, Livia, like when you're out of alignment, anger is the first thing that shows up. So if you're ever feeling like angry or honestly just mad about things, like that's your indication that something's out of alignment. And so the first thing that I do when I work with people is getting them kind of familiar with what their it's called your not self theme when you're not being yourself, the sign that you're out of alignment. And so it's getting them familiar with what that feels like and where in their life is really bringing that to the surface. So For manifestors, it's anger. For generators and manifesting generators, it's frustration. For projectors, it's bitterness. And for reflectors, it's disappointment. And so, if any of you guys are listening, tune into where in your life you're feeling that energy. And if you're not sure, start journaling every single day and writing down, okay, what made me angry today? What made me feel bitter? What frustrated me today? Just start noticing. And then also diving into the sign that you're in alignment, which is called your signature theme, is the sign that you are working with your energy. And a lot of us do this subconsciously without even trying. So for generators and manifesting generators, that's satisfaction. For manifestors, it's peace. For projectors, it's success. And for reflectors, it's surprise or delight. And so then it's also asking yourself, what satisfied me today? Or what brought me, what felt like success today? What made me feel really at peace today? And just asking yourself. And then you start to see the little things and the big themes in your life. And so then you can really start to get confronted with, okay, what changes do I need to make? Um, so I love that you had that realization, Livia. I feel like that's so powerful.
Yeah, it happened after, as we were going through our reading. And so when for people who are interested in human design, let's say they have their birth information, right? And we'll link in the show notes where people can go and find their chart on your website. But how can people like dip their toe in a little bit more if they're like without overcomplicating, like going super deep into it? Like how can they get just kind of start their human design journey?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple different things. So first, yeah, look up your chart, of course. I think that's step number one. And then, there's lots of free resources that exist. We have tons of free resources in my company. And so if you want to go on my website, there's a couple blog posts, but we also have a free tool called Decode Your Design. It'll be listed right when you look up your chart. And that's free. You put in the exact same information and it'll kind of decode your chart at a basic level and just kind of like tell you what your gift is. There's this whole part on your personality, which is called profile. And so it'll tell you just some little like really digestible tidbits on what you are and how you operate. And they're really fun. A lot of people screenshot them and they'll share them on Instagram and stuff. It's cute. And then, the next thing is to, dive into our podcast. We've got episodes dedicated to everything. So I would listen to those and then just poke on Instagram. We've got tons of posts on especially energy type. And there's lots on the internet as well, too. So I recommend just following some really great people there. And then if you want to dive deeper, my biggest thing that I do, which I'm going to put one together for Livia, and we'll put a code too for your community. It's called the Human Design Guidebook. They're completely personalized and custom. So they're 95 plus pages and they dive into literally everything. And I don't make it complicated. Like it's very digestible language because I know there's a lot of jargon once you get into the human design. So those are really great. People gift them. I know people who keep them on their coffee table or at their desk when they just like want to remember who they are. And yeah, so I think that's kind of the next thing that I would do. And I'll give a discount code. And we also have a whole network of readers that I've trained who would love to meet you all. I do readings as well, but um, everyone who is that I've taught, they love to meet people. They're a little bit cheaper than I am. And so yeah, those are all the ways you can dive a little bit deeper. And we've also got like a training and stuff like that too, but those are kind of the first pieces I'd start with.
Yeah, I love your content on social media, how you break it up, break
Thank
it
you.
into types like your morning ritual as a manifester and, so many, bite-sized ways to learn more. So all of those things will be linked in the show notes. And then for people that would be kind of the options if they want to go one step deeper. But for those people who might have like an aha moment like you of like, I actually want to like learn how to read. I want to deepen it. I know you have a retreat and you train other people, but what would be that kind
Mhm.
of like, I'm ready to kind of go all in option?
Yeah, so I have a course called Human Design Mastery, and it's a course to become a human design reader, or if you just like simply want to learn human design, we've got a lot of people in there who are just like, I want to know this for my family, or they already have a career. And, there's people who are in real estate, nutrition, we've got astrologers, we've got, I mean, literally every type of avenue of people in there, and they're just learning human design to add that to their current, kind of suite of knowledge essentially and how they work with clients, lots of coaches in there. And so you can join that program and you'll learn literally the most amount on human design ever. I have taken, I'm not even exaggerating, like dozens of human design trainings, conventional and unconventional. And I really believe that this course is like one of the best human design courses. I've put my heart and soul into it. and it's self-paced, but you can also join a live round. And I'm not sure when this episode comes out, but I have a live round starting at the end of February. So you can get in today and also join the live round when it starts. So basically, anyone in the self-paced course gets free access to the live round. They just have to let me know that they want to be in it so they get the Zoom links. So yeah, that's kind of like the way to dive super deep into it. And then I do have a retreat coming up in May. It's a human design retreat. It'll be like a very relaxing, rejuvenating retreat, and we'll do some human design workshops, manifestation workshops. That's in May in Costa Rica, and we have quite a few spots left. So, if you're interested in meeting me in person and just honestly having a vacation, there's a whole spa day included. Would love to have everyone there because Costa Rica is pure magic. And I should have added in my story that like how I got to where I am started with a Costa Rica retreat where I basically realized that like everything in my life was wrong. So it's really kind of full circle having my first retreat there.
That's so special. I feel like retreats are such that space, even if in like a condensed amount of time, people have such aha moments, and it's typically related to alignment. Like, why can't I live like this and feel like this every day? So, I would love to join one of your retreats. Costa Rica sounds so dreamy,
Oh my gosh,
so
please
special.
come.
So
That would be so fun.
so fun. Okay, so what comes next for you when you think about what's on the horizon? You obviously have so many amazing offerings now, but is there anything that's kind of been pulling at your heartstrings a little bit of like, I want to explore more here and maybe create something new?
Yeah. Oh gosh, we've got so much happening. And I actually just brought on a business coach yesterday. And so I'm excited to start working with him because he's like, you've got a lot happening at once. And it's been really cool. My business has grown like, I mean, super fast, almost like scarily fast. And so I actually brought him on just so I have some help. I'm like, I need to like figure out how to like hit the brakes a little bit, but I just got a book deal, so I'm writing a human design book, which will be a beginner's guide to human design. And so that won't be coming until 2025. But yeah, so I'm starting to write that right now. And I'm also building an app, which we kicked off last week. So, or last month. And that will be the biggest project that I work on ever. And, I mentioned my corporate job was in tech. And so I ran a development team. So it's another full circle moment, building, something really cool. And I think that will probably be the main thing that I do, in the future. But we've got other projects, and we're working on building out some human design merch and some fun things for people to, start wearing their energy type around. And um, yeah, those are kind of our big projects at the moment. And I'm sure there's like little things in there, but that's everything that I feel like I can announce publicly at the moment. So lots of exciting things.
Yes, I think the book and the app will definitely expand your reach so much, right? Getting into the
Yeah.
hands of other people and super exciting. So, final
Yeah.
question I close up every conversation with is what is lighting you up these days? What's really sparking joy for you?
Mm, honestly, like life design. So I do human design, but I'm like very interested in like life creation, and so something that's been lighting me up is just like really creating plans for yourself and like getting really in touch with like your dream life and what that looks like and how to create different habits and routines and rituals inside of your life to really like have the life that you see and you desire to live, and doing that with your human design. So right now that's been my biggest thing. I think it's because I'm doing 75 hard at the moment, like reading self-help books and really getting again, like confronted has been the word of this entire podcast, but like confronting parts of myself that I don't like or that I do like, and learning how to adjust those things to really, optimize my energy and to create the life and stuff that I'm looking forward to in the next few years. So that's what I'm really excited about right now. So yeah.
Love it. Well, we will link all the links, all the codes, all the ways to get in touch with you. I know the Ina Wellness community, some of them already know you from being part of our membership and doing readings with you, but I'm so excited to expand and share what you do with our community here. So thanks for making the time. I hope to connect with you at some point again, some point, maybe in person.
Yeah, you'll have to come on my podcast next. But thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to meet some of your beautiful community members.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please rate and review, and don't forget to subscribe. Learn more at enowellnesscollective.com and connect with us on Instagram at Eno Wellness Collective.